Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm really glad you're here. If you enjoy fun content and cool videos, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Let's jump right in.
I tapped on the arrow on my screen and watched as the camera panned across my living room. I continued tapping until I got the notification that my camera had reached the maximum swivel on that side. Then I tapped the arrow to swivel it the other way. As the camera rotated, I caught sight of a black, curly tail. There she was. Little sparks of joy bloomed in my heart. I panned the camera down and saw her staring straight at my screen. Her beautiful, adorable face cocked to one side. Her soft golden eyes wide open. I looked around the train carriage, then pressed the talk button on the app and said as softly as possible, "Hey girl." Zepto's ears pricked up and she sat up excitedly, her tail wagging so hard that her little bum moved along with it. She then started sniffing about near the camera, looking confused. I giggled out loud, then quickly caught myself. My pup seemed to be doing well alone at home. That was a relief. I was surprised she hadn't torn everything to bits, but then again, I'd placed everything she could possibly rip apart out of her reach. "I'll be home soon," I whispered into my phone, and watched as her tail wagged harder. I'd just got a pup for 2 months, and I had never left it alone at home before, partly because I had people I could call over to help watch her when I was out, and mostly because I just really love staying home. In fact, I think I'd left the house only twice in the last 2 months. I would say I need a life, but I've got a pup, so I reckon I've already got an awesome one. When I got home, Zepto's barks and whines started the minute I stepped out of the lift. I could hear her scratching at the door. I flung it open dramatically, and she leaped up on my thighs, pawing, tail wagging, trying to lick my face. I bent down and let her lick me all over the face. I needed to wash my face after anyway. I've been staying alone in this apartment for the past half a year, and I'd finally got the best companion and roommate I've ever had. Zepto was a handful, but she was worth every struggle and accommodation. As a freelancer with the internet, it was easy for me to never have to leave her alone, except for times when clients insist on face-to-face meets. I hated those. I washed and refilled Zepto's water dish and dropped a couple of ice cubes in it. I took out the ice tray to fill up, but it was already filled. I must have filled it last night. I sat down at my desk and got to work. I liked to do up my designs right after discussions, while the main points were fresh in my head. I lost track of time and only looked up when I heard a cupboard slam. I sat up and my heart started to race. That sounded like the kitchen cupboard, which Zepto would not be able to reach. I emptied my stationery holder of my pens and clutched it tightly in my hand as I went to check out the noise. I carefully turned the corner into the kitchen and peered past the wall. No one. I breathed out a sigh of relief. Nonetheless, when I returned to my bedroom, Zepto following, I locked the door before going to bed. The next day, I had to leave the house again, this time for a short dinner meeting with a client. My heart ached as Zepto scurried to the doorway as I left, closing the gate on her. She stared at me, whining, "Bye girl, bye baby, I'll be back so soon. I love you." I patted her head one last time, then steeled myself and closed the door. I heard her whining all the way to the lift, breaking my heart. On the way to dinner, I checked the pet camera. She was still at the door, whining. For the whole half-hour ride to the dinner, she lay by the door, occasionally getting up to sniff and whine. It was heart-wrenching to watch. I needed to end that meeting early. Unfortunately for me, the edits and feedback given by the client were comprehensive and thorough. It seemed like everything he had wanted from the start was no longer applicable. Something bright and fun became something preferably more elegant and clean. Bold, loud font became swirly fancy fonts, and so on and so forth. It was dark by the time the meeting was done. I rushed out of the restaurant and flagged a cab. I wasn't about to take the extra time for public transport, not with poor Zepto waiting anxiously. Once in the cab, I activated the pet camera. She wasn't there at the door. Well, at least she finally got comfortable and went on to do her own thing. I panned the camera, and it swiveled slowly across the room. My heart seized as the back of a figure came into view in the corner of the screen. I swiveled the camera a little more, so that it was now centered. I felt nauseated, my stomach bottoming out. I couldn't make out the figure's legs, just long black hair down its back, the arms and body clothed in what seemed to be a ragged white shirt. Floating, it seemed. Fear pricked my neck. I almost asked the cabbie to take a look, to make sure I wasn't crazy. But I decided against it. Perhaps if I didn't acknowledge it, if no one else did, it would disappear. Then the head started to turn. The side of its pale face appeared, showing dark eyes. Then the head turned completely, and both of its eyes, which I now saw were a dark red, stared directly at the camera. At me, I gasped and switched the app off. "Hold on a moment," I told the cab. I considered going to my friend's place instead, getting reinforcements before heading back. But then I remembered Zepto. Oh shit, my poor dear Zepto, alone with that thing. "It's all right. Sorry. Just go ahead and hurry, please." Summoning all my courage, I switched the app back on and braced myself for that image. But I let out the breath I'd been holding when I saw that it was no longer there. I took a few more deep breaths, then forced my finger to press the arrow button, making the camera swivel around. There Zepto was, safe and sound. I sighed in relief. My darling was fine, so far. She was lying on the couch and nuzzling against something. The thin air, it seemed. I looked closer, blinking my eyes repeatedly to get a clearer view. Then I thought I made out a white, fuzzy image of a thigh, a leg. Zepto was nestled against. That thing. My cab reached at that moment, and I shot out, nearly forgetting to pay. I quickly threw down some cash, asked the cabbie to keep the change, and starting running. That fucking thing was not going to hurt my dog. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge coward. I'm terrified of anything supernatural, ghosts, spirits, demons. The idea of encountering them usually paralyzes me. Just talking about them makes me break into a cold sweat. But tonight, a deep, blazing rage fueled me when I thought about that fucking thing harming my precious Zepto. The sweetest dog you'd ever meet. The dog who loves me so deeply, whom I love. That rage somehow dulled my fears, and all I could feel was a tingling current as I jabbed the lift button multiple times. The doors closed, and I was headed up to save my doggy. At the door, I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking from adrenaline. There was no sound from within. I panicked, and my hands shook more. Finally, I got the key in and turned it. As I did, I heard the familiar sound of Zepto barking and gave a heartfelt prayer of thanks to the universe. My dog was fine. I opened the door, ready to grab Zepto and run. Zepto leaped up at me excitedly, tail wagging so hard her butt was once again wiggling in joy. She licked and nipped at me excitedly. I bent down and picked her up, despite the fact that she was growing to be a big pup, kind of heavy. I nuzzled my face to hers, then quickly looked around. Nothing out of the ordinary. I walked in, still leaving the door open, ready to run. I checked out every part of the house. No one else was there. I didn't sense anything off other than fear emanating from my taut nerves. I began to relax. I placed Zepto gently on the ground and went to get a glass of water. Funny how thirsty I could get when I'm terrified. I closed the fridge door and poured a glass from the cold water jar. Then I looked up to see its eyes boring straight into mine. I screamed, backing away and dropping the glass. Zepto ran to me and looked up, concerned and confused. It didn't seem to understand what I was worried about. Then the thing, still staring into my soul, swished forward in a rush, and I felt a force shove me down onto the floor. I fell back and plopped down hard on the glass pieces on the kitchen floor. I gasped from the pain and shock, all the while with my heart juddering in fear. That was when Zepto growled. That thing looked surprised and stared at Zepto. No, Zepto, run. Zepto ignored my commands. Zepto continued to growl, a hair-raising sound that I had never heard her produce before. Not around me, the thing took a step back, an odd look on its face. It took me a while to register it as hurt. It looked hurt. Zepto pounced forward, growling, snapping, snarling. It took a few steps back, away from me. Then it tilted its head and reached out its hand to Zepto, seeming to be appealing to her. Zepto snapped at its hand. It pulled away, shock on its features. Then it put its hand down and lowered its head and faded from sight. Still in shock, I just sat on the kitchen floor, bleeding in many places. Zepto ran up to me and started licking at my wounds. I had to lift her up and shuffle to the living room to avoid having her cut her paws on the glass fragments. We sat together on the couch for a while as I bled. Then I held Zepto close and cried into her fur, tears of both fear and gratitude. My friend drove over that night and helped to clean and tend to my wounds. I didn't say a word to her about what had happened, just that I had dropped my glass and fallen, but she seemed to sense my fear and that something was wrong. We stayed up the entire night, watching movies, with Zepto curled up between us on the couch. With Zepto laying her soft fuzzy head on my lap, my nerves began to unwind. I stroked her head gently, feeling even more love for her than before, something I hadn't thought was possible. We've moved out of that apartment since. The very next day, I packed my essentials, Zeptos, food, toys, bowls, and so on, and we got out of there. We stayed at a bed and breakfast for a week, until I found another apartment. I never went back to that apartment, just got movers to do the rest. I left that pet camera behind too. Somehow, it felt tainted. I got myself a brand new one and set it up. It worked just fine. I hope to never have to leave Zepto home alone again. But life happens, and if I ever do, I'd be monitoring that camera the whole time. If need be, I've got a shoe cupboard filled with a plethora of freaky, spirit-warding stuff I found on the internet. We would protect each other, Zepto and I. When I got home, My roommate was acting weird. I asked him what was wrong, but he said nothing, as he looked around nervously. I'd just gotten home from a lunch date, and he was getting ready to leave for his afternoon shift. But he was frazzled. Something was definitely wrong. He left, and the house was quiet. Soon, I'd have to go to bed and sleep before I went to work a night shift. For now, I plopped down on the couch. I wanted to watch something on my phone, but as I scrolled through the options, I couldn't find anything good. When I set my phone down, I finally noticed how dark and quiet the house was. I felt something scratchy next to my hand and jumped, ... My blanket from when I was a kid. My mom had dropped it off for a reminder of home. Man, I needed to calm down. I relaxed and took in the scratchy blanket, the rough texture of the old couch, the tick-tock sound of the nearby clock, the scratchy sound on the wall behind the couch. I jumped up again and looked behind the couch. Nothing. I was going to sock my roommate on the arm later for freaking me out. Once again, I calmed down and took it all in as I drifted off. The ticking clock, the scratchy blanket, rough couch, the hand scratching my back. I just drifted into ... I was shocked awake, but I was too freaked out to move. It felt like rough, lanky fingers gently scratching on my upper back. When I tensed up, I felt the fingers tense up. I finally rolled quickly off the couch, and I swear I could see a huge, dark hand moving fast out of the corner of my eye. I emboldened myself and madly tore into the cushions. Nothing. It's got to be my imagination, right? I made myself sit down on the other side of the couch. Something tried to grab my frickin' hand. This time, I flicked open my pocket knife and wielded it over my head like a madman as I ripped away the cushions. Nothing. I grabbed my blanket and yanked it up, ... Nothing, as my adrenaline surged. I stomped off to my room, still clenching the blanket. I collapsed into bed with my blanket next to me as I faded into sleep. I dreamed my blanket was coming to life and was rolling on top of me to suffocate me. I woke up. I could feel the scratchy blanket sitting on my chest, right over my heart. Its fingers spread over me the size of a dinner plate. I don't know why it came to mind right then that my roommate worked in the research department of the local university's biology lab. I blinked as my eyes adjusted to the dim light and found myself staring into several pairs of tiny black eyes in the middle of a demonic-looking creature with several furry legs emanating from it. I tried desperately not to increase my breathing, as I knew that would make it react. I couldn't stab it without stabbing myself. Bird spiders called that because they literally hunt birds are normally huge. But with legs spanning 12 inches wide, this one was as big as they ever got. I guess I know what my roommate was up to lately with all the late nights in the lab. I couldn't hold my breath anymore, and my heart rate increased. It slowly lifted its fangs to strike. I swatted it with my blanket, and both it and the blanket flew into the corner. I grabbed my phone and shined the screen toward it. I saw the blanket move. I hopped up into a crouched position and lunged at it. I rained down blows on the blanket. It was screeching, "Die, you freak." After a while, I collapsed against the wall, hyperventilating but never taking my eyes off the blanket. Was that thing moving? I couldn't believe it. I saw furry legs clawing their way out of the wool cloth. I grabbed the thing and yelled, "Die already," as I hurled it out the open window. Both it and the blanket landed in my barbecue pit in the yard. Perfect. I ran outside with a lighter and lighter fluid, angrily laughing like a madman. The coals in the pit were old and used, but should work. I saw furry legs trying to claw out of the pit, but retracted quickly as I doused it in fluid. When I stuck the lighter to it, it lunged at me to bite, but I was ready and stabbed it with a poker with my other hand. The fire roared with a whoosh, and wouldn't you know it, that thing screamed like a banshee. The blanket burned to sorry mum. I grabbed a spike-tipped tenderizing hammer and smashed the ashes until there was nothing left. Now, as I'm typing this in my car and it's night out, I still shudder when I feel an itch on my skin. I'm outside a pet shop and the owner is just getting here to unlock it. He's got a bird spider that should be a perfect parting gift for my roommate. As I move out tonight, trapped right under his pillow. The one he always lays on and adjusts as soon as he gets home in the mornings. After that, I'm crashing at Mum and Dad's place. It's late. Sleep well, everyone. My wife, a spoiled only child to wealthy parents living in rural New York. We'd been married for 8 months at the time, and things could not have been going better. We had a house, great careers, and a couple of cars to really sow in the American dream. We'd been planning on getting a dog, with thoughts of children not too distant either, though things wouldn't go as planned. One morning my wife got a call from the police, informing her that both her parents had died in a car crash. I'd never seen her so distraught in my entire life. After the wake and funerals came the nitty-gritty legal stuff nobody ever wants to talk about after a death. When we went over the will, we found that her parents had left her their estate, a 200-acre plot of land with $1 million home on the lake. We were shocked, to say the least. We began moving in as soon as possible. We sold our old house and aunt cars and graciously accepted all the belongings her parents wished us to have. There was one problem though. The house just felt ... dead. It was so large, yet somehow cramped. All the walls seemed tighter than they should have, and you could scream from one end of the house and not hear it at the other. It took some getting used to, but the old behemoth finally grew on us. At least that's what I told my wife. When I was home alone, there was just something disconcerting about the place. A creak in the floor and rustle on the windows. The chill on my neck when I walked past a reflective window, feeling as if I was being watched. I truly hated it. My wife worked late every weeknight. She took care of people and a home for the Ark, and her shifts ran from 4 to midnight. I usually enjoyed that brief alone time. I would often write or read, or sometimes pack a huge bong and really get into a movie. And this one was one of those nights. I settled in for the night. I took a few big hits off my bong and wrapped myself in a blanket and started my movie. It was a Friday and only 8 o'clock, so I figured a few beers wouldn't hurt either. I had 4.5 hours until my wife got back. I cracked a few and made it about halfway through my movie before I heard something downstairs. I swear I thought it was the house playing tricks on me like it's done many times in the past. I tried to ignore it, but then I heard something slam. I quickly got up and went downstairs. My heart froze when I could see the glow of the kitchen light that I know I had turned off. I quietly inched my way to the large doorway that entered into the kitchen. I could hear movement. An overwhelming sense of dread seeped over my body as I finally peeked around the wall. It was my wife, Jesus Christ woman. I half-jokingly shouted out to her. She jumped, startled of my presence. "Oh God, don't scare me like that," she said. "Don't scare you. I just thought I was about to die. You don't think you could have called out to say hello or something? And why are you home so early anyway? Is Julie all right with that? I asked. Yeah, she's fine. I told her I wasn't feeling well, she said. And, are you feeling well? I asked, seeing that she seemed perfectly fine. She had a guilty look. I'm totally fine. I just didn't feel like being there. She said with a half giggle. I found it surprising. She never comes home early, and she didn't seem to make a big deal about it. I quickly changed my focus when I noticed she had a few bags of groceries. I asked her what she was making, to which she excitedly responded, chicken Alfredo. Oh damn, can't wait. Need help? I asked. She turned around with a knife in her hand as she laid out the chicken. She smiled and said no. She slowly pointed the knife towards my face with lusty eyes. Tonight is about you, she said, getting the knife closer to my face. I'm going to make you this dinner, and maybe later you can help me with a few other things. She smiled again, deviously. I bit my lip and watched her continue to prepare the meal. I grabbed her butt and told her I was going to watch the rest of my movie. I went upstairs and sat down for my movie. About 15 minutes later, my wife walked into the room, the knife still in her hand. Dinner is ready, is all she said as she slowly left the room. I went down minutes later to find the dinner all nicely set up and ready to eat. The table looked amazing. Too amazing. Oh my God, you outdid yourself. I've got to get a picture of this for Instagram. I shuffled through my pockets and noticed I had left my phone upstairs. I quickly went up and couldn't seem to find it anywhere. I'm sure it was just lost in the blankets. I went to the top of the steps and shouted down, "Can you call my phone?" She laughed. "Knew you got to work for this Insta picture. Come on," I said. "My food is getting cold." There was no response. I continued looking for about 3 minutes, until I finally heard it vibrating. I found it on the ground underneath one of my shirts. It was my wife finally calling me. "Finally," I said, and hung up the phone as I stood up to go downstairs. The phone rang again. My wife again. I answered the phone. "What do you want?" "Excuse me, what was that finally for? And why are you being rude?" She said, "You wouldn't call my phone," I said. "Sorry, I can't call you whenever you think about it. I'm at work, I've got shit to do," she said, sending a cold spike through my core. "What did you just say?" I asked. I said I'm busy. I've got another hour of work, and I was just calling to tell you I miss you. "But you gotta answer the phone like a dick," she said. "So you're saying you're not home?" "In the kitchen," I said, my voice now quiet and shaky. "Oh, haha. I'm not in the kitchen, good one." She laughed. No. I mean, there is someone here that looks exactly like you downstairs. I thought you came home early." I gulped as my realizations paralyzed my body. "You need to lock the bedroom door right now and find whatever weapon you can." "I'm calling the police," she said frantically. "Babe, what the hell is going on? Who is that?" I asked, fear flaking from my voice. "It's my sister." I stayed in the room until the police arrived. Turns out she had gotten skittish and left far before the cops got there. They found arsenic in the food, the knife stuck in the table, and a note with 4 words. "The house is mine." My wife never told me about her twin sister. Apparently she'd been in and out of prison and psych wards her whole life. She'd been disowned by the family and was as good as dead. That is, until she heard about the accident. Now all those strange feelings I was getting feel a lot more valid, and those feelings haven't stopped. This just happened, and I'm still shaking. I'm terrified that whatever that was might come back. I can't stop shaking. My fingers are quivering as I peck this out the keyboard. Everything in my head is telling me that it couldn't have happened, that I was seeing things, or that it was a night terror. As much as I hate to admit, it had to be real. I know good and well that I am sane, but the fear I have borders on trepidation. I wanted to post this to Reddit and ask for help, if anyone knows what this might be, or if anyone has a similar experience. What I saw, what happened, please hear me out. Hear me out and believe that it is the truth, and that I am of sound mind. It stared when I was home alone, cliché I know, but hear me out. I was sitting on the couch in the den watching House. It was about 8 o'clock, and my parents, brother, and 2 sisters had just left to get dinner roughly 30 minutes ago. I, being sick with the strep virus that has been going around, stayed home. Just me and my 2 dogs, who were in my brother's room just down the hall. I had just let them out 5 minutes ago and put them in there. So I sat, couch-locked, with a bowl of hot soup and Dr. Gregory House. Everything was good. I'm sitting, watching, eating when there is a knock at the door. I really don't want to get up and answer the door, so I just sit there. Ignore it and it'll go away, right? I finish my soup and lay down. I figure I'll try to get some sleep. The minute I close my eyes, there is another knock at the door. I ignore it again. I close my eyes, resolved on counting sheep. Thud, 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 to someone is pounding on my door. I lean up and look over the couch to see who the hell is beating down my door at this hour. No one. It is pitch black outside. I look over at the oven clock. 10:47. I'm pretty freaked out. I sink low into the couch to make sure that if there was someone out there, they couldn't see me. I watched the window on the door for a good long while, hoping to catch whoever was knocking. Not a sound, just dead silence. Maybe they saw that the TV on and left. I closed my eyes again, thinking that they had just left. Clearly no one was going to open the door for them. Thud, 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 thud. Louder this time. I was torn from my sleep and thrown into a state of panic. Someone was out there, ... waiting. I turn off the TV, making sure it was as dark inside as it was outside. I wait for my eyes to adjust and slip into the kitchen, crawling on my hands and knees. I can't see the front door from the kitchen, so I hurry. I grab a knife from the drawer, expecting the worst, expecting the door to give way to whoever was pounding on it. Thud, 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 again louder. I clench the knife in my hand as tight as possible, preparing for a fight. I inch over to the corner and peer out. Nothing was there. I watch the door, still nothing out there. The porch light is on, but I still can see anything. I need to call to someone, but I left my phone in my room, which is to the immediate left of the front door. I walk down the hall, making sure I'm not visible from the front door. Finally, I reach my brother's room. Maybe our dogs will scare them off, but the dogs aren't in there. The room is empty. I put the dogs in there. I know I did. Where the hell are they? Where is my family? They left at 6:30, and now it is nearly 11 o'clock. I close the door and quietly make my way back to the den. Thud, 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 thud. Heard the door handle shaking as the thudding continued, louder than ever. I still have the knife, but I question its use against whoever is out there. I hunker down behind the sofa, waiting for it to stop. I lean up to get a look at it, but again, nothing. The pounding stopped, and it was silent. Nothing was outside. I get up, making sure that I don't break eye contact with the window for even a second. Making it past that door to my phone is my top priority. I walk carefully up to the door, hugging the wall so that I am not seen. I am 10 feet from my bedroom door. I step out, form around the corner to see it there in the window staring at me. It slammed its face into the window, cracking it, sending web-like fracture throughout the glass. It fogged up the window with its breath. Its eyes burned bright yellow, and its face was unbelievably pale. Its mouth hung open, crooked, full of jagged yellow teeth. Its mouth slowly turned upwards into a grin, but it sat there, making no noise with its face against the glass. I froze. I screamed in my head, "Run!" but I couldn't move. Its grin grew wider as it gazed at me, feeding off of my terror. It pressed its head into the window again, cracking it more. I closed my eyes tight, shaking my head, regaining control over my body. When I opened them again, it was gone. I ran into my bedroom and slammed the door behind me. I ran into my room and set the knife on my desk next to my phone and ripped my phone off of its charger. I opened up the contacts and hit the first number on the recent contact list. Thud, 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 thud. The door is shaking violently. The phone is ringing. My mum answers. "What?" She sounded tired. "Where are you?" I was yelling. "I'm in the den." Where else would I be? "It's 11:30. "Quit yelling," she said quietly. I pulled my phone away from my ear to look at the screen, hoping to figure something out. "I thought you were out for dinner," I asked, my voice thin. "We've been back since 8:20. She sounded exasperated. I hung up the phone and put it back on my desk. The knife was gone. No, this isn't right. I was on the couch. I think I would have known if they came home. I slowly opened my door to peer out at the front window. The cracks in the glass were gone. I stepped out into the entryway and looked outside. It's dark, but no movement whatsoever. I looked out into the den to see my mum sitting on the sofa watching celebrity news that she recorded. What the hell is happening? ... I didn't take any medication, so I was sure as hell sober. I look at the glass, rubbing my head. This all happened. Why is everything normal? Why isn't the glass broken? I walk down the hallway to my brother's room to talk to him, but he is fast asleep. The dogs come running out as soon as I open the door. The dogs weren't in there when I opened the door earlier. I pet them and let them out. I let the dogs back in, and my mum turns to me. "Why did you call me?" "I didn't know you were home," I replied. She frowned. "Go to bed." I turned and walked back to my room, keeping a watchful eye on the front door. There is no way that I imagined this. It was all too real. There is no way that they were home. I was in the den the whole time. I pulled the covers up tight to my chest, hoping it would bring me comfort. It didn't. I threw the covers off and began typing. I remembered that Reddit had a place for things like this, a place where people could share experience and seek advice. What was out there was as real as I am. The fear I am feeling is real too. What the hell was that thing? Why my house? Why me? Never in my life have I been paralyzed by fear before. Please believe me. Please help me. I was home alone one night back in 2009. My parents were out on their weekly date nights. One of those had one too many at dinner and passed out in the movie theater kind of dates. Anyways, I had just returned from my afternoon jog. Being a hot August day, I had worked up quite a sweat on my run, so I had decided to take a cold shower and clean up a bit. My house doesn't have air conditioning and was quite stuffed up, so I decided to open a few windows to circulate the airflow within the house. I can remember opening a window in the kitchen, 2 windows across from each other in the living room, and 1 window in the basement. I knew I was going to be spending my evening down there watching movies since it was much cooler. I had my shower, got dressed and went downstairs to make myself some dinner. I took my dinner down to the basement and flicked on Netflix to start my binge-filled night of new shows. I do not recall falling asleep, but I must have passed out not long after eating my food and lying down. When I woke up, it was dark outside. The only light being cast into the basement was from the dimly lit TV screen. It was now freezing in the basement. I could feel a cold breeze circulating the room from having the window open for too long. I got up and walked over to the light switch that was located at the bottom of the stairs. I closed the window, then went back to turn off the TV, grab my dishes, and head upstairs. When I got upstairs, all the lights were off, indicating that my parents were still not home from their date. I cleaned the dishes, put them in the dishwasher, and closed the window above the sink. Just before I went to go up to my room for the night, I remembered that the windows in the living room were still open. I walked over to close the one window by the TV, then over to the next, which was located by the front porch. I noticed that my mum's vase with fake flowers was knocked off the table in front of the window, and the flowers were sprawled out across the floor. I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe there was a strong breeze and the curtains had tipped it over. I closed the window and started picking up the flowers. As I was cleaning, I heard a faint squeaky sound. What I could only imagine was a door handle being twisted. I listened as hard as possible. Following the squeak of the handle was a creak in the hallway floor upstairs. A pain shot from my stomach to my chest, and I froze. What seemed like an eternity of being bent over with my one hand holding the vase and the other clutching the flowers. I slowly stood up. I looked out the front window to check the driveway for my parents' car, hoping it was one of them upstairs. The driveway was empty. My heart sank. I quickly, but quietly, put the vase and flowers down on the table and silently began walking over to the bottom of the stairs to look up. I got closer to the stairs. I heard 2 more creaks on the floor which caused me to stop dead in my tracks. I waited, listening, nothing. I was now only a few steps from the stairs. I took those last few steps and put one hand on the railing. I peeked around the corner and only saw darkness. I didn't know what to do. Do I flick on the lights and let the potential intruder in my house know that I'm coming upstairs? Do I leave and go to a friend's house? Do I call my parents? Do I grow a pair and just go upstairs? I decided to turn my phone on silent and go to the kitchen to text my dad, making sure I was close to the back door for an easy getaway. He said, "It's an old house. It's just settling after a really hot day." I told him about the sound of the door handle twisting. He just assumed there was an open window upstairs and the wind was knocking a door against the frame. Was that it? Could it just be a window that was left open? I felt a huge chunk of my anxiety start to fade after talking with my dad. So I decided to grab a glass of water and head on up the bed. I flicked on the lights for the stairs and started making my way up, but slowly, a tiny knot in my stomach from before. I got to the top of the stairs and noticed that all of the doors were wide open, except for mine. My parents' room and spare bedroom were on the left, and the den and my room were on the right, with the bathroom at the end of the hallway. Though, as my dad had predicted, my door was cracked just enough that a breeze could be making it hit the frame. It being as hot as it was today, It wasn't unusual for my mum to open all the doors and windows upstairs. I exhaled a sigh of relief, now fully confident that my dad was right. I turned on the lights to my room, did a quick look around, and walked over to my nightstand to put my water beside my laptop, then went off to the bathroom to get ready for bed. As I lay in bed trying to get sleepy, I was watching my favorite reruns of Seinfeld on my laptop. Then out of nowhere, I heard a sound of something slowly scraping my closet door. I quickly flicked on the light beside my bed. My closet door was cracked open ever so slightly. Questions started racing through my head. Was it open the whole time? Was it closed when I came in? I was positive that it was closed when I came in. Before I even had time to rationalize my thoughts, I heard the most disturbing, creepy, quiet, sinister laugh I've ever heard in my life. No horror movie could ever replicate the sound I just heard. As soon as I slid my laptop off my legs, the closet door burst open and someone was standing in the closet. My clothes were partially covering their body and face. I looked closer and there was the most sickly, palest, dirtiest woman I have ever seen. For the split second that I saw her in horror, the image was burned into my brain forever. She had no shoes on her disgusting, dirt-stained feet. Her skin was sickeningly white with cuts and dried blood from her face, down her arms, all the way to her legs. She was wearing what I assume used to be a white nightgown, was now a discolored mess of dirt, blood, and who knows what else. Her grey, blue-veined, sunken-in face closely resembled a decaying skeleton. The rest of her face was hidden by my clothes. She asked in a quiet, grumbling, raspy voice, "Have you seen my baby?" That was enough for me to grab my phone and run. As soon as I was halfway out my bedroom door, I heard her shriek, "Give me back my baby," and clothes hangers thrashing around behind me. I ran as fast as I could to the upstairs bathroom and locked the door. It was only a second later that I heard a huge crash against the door, along with the woman screaming in a devilish tone, demanding I return her baby to her. I called 911 and the operator assured me the police would be there as fast as they could. I jammed my feet against the door and held my back against the sink, trying my hardest to make sure the door stayed closed. The woman would not let up though. Her shrieks turned into low, demon-like grunts, and her banging on the door turned into heavy bodily blows. With what seemed like an eternity, I heard a heavenly sound. I heard the police call out that they were entering the residence. I yelled at the top of my lungs that I was upstairs. All I could hear next was a mixed commotion of the officers yelling and the woman growling. The officers ended up pepper spraying the woman, and it took 3 of them to be able to force her to the ground. She was yelling in a possessed-like state the entire time. I did not come out of the bathroom until the cops assured me she was out of the house. The cops told me she was likely on drugs, or an escaped mental patient from the next county over. I tried telling them that she sounded like she was possessed or something, but they chalked it up to the woman just needing her medication. My parents arrived home shortly after I gave my statements to the police. We moved out of that house a month later. That was one night I was home alone that sadly I will never forget. Okay guys, I've been reading a lot of posts of y'all's experiences and creepy encounters. Now I have lots of different and terrifying experiences, but the most recent one, an easily remembered one, is a good starting point. I was 19 at the time, and I was home visiting my parents and grandmother on Christmas break from college. A little insight on my parents' and grandmother's house is that it is a 2-story home, and it's not abnormally old for a house. Maybe around 50 years old at this time, maybe a tad bit older than that. I don't know of any dark history on the land at all, other than my grandfather passing away in my grandmother's room back in '99 with lung cancer. It wasn't a surprise. The hospital let him go home to die in peace, and we all knew it was coming. He had a great life, so nothing sinister that I know of. Anyway, my parents, sister, and grandmother were all out doing something. I can't remember what exactly they were doing in town, so they asked me to stay at the house to feed the dogs. My grandmother has like 10 dogs because after my grandfather passed, all she's really done is try to fill a void. Which is understandable in a way, but seriously, she has way too many fucking dogs. I agreed I would stay at the house for them. I'm a homebody anyway, and don't really like being around crowds, so I kinda looked forward to being alone by myself with satellite TV. My grandmother and my room were on the main floor, while my parents and my sister's room were upstairs on the 2nd floor. My sister was 15 at this point, but she had this pink star-shaped doorbell on the outside of her door that's been up since she was a kid. It's probably been about an hour at this point since I've been alone. I was watching some documentary on the History Channel when I heard stomping around coming from upstairs. Now, I've heard some footsteps upstairs before, when I was home alone and even with friends over. Yeah, kinda creepy, but I was kind of used to it by now. From where I was sitting, I can see the entrance to the stairs to the right. I didn't really pay any mind to it, so I continued watching TV. It was probably around 10 minutes ago, since I heard the footsteps when I heard that fucking little doorbell go off twice in a row upstairs on my sister's door. Every hair on my body stood up. I muted the TV and listened for about a minute. Nothing happened. I told myself that the thing is a little old and might have some faulty wiring. Right before I turned up the volume, it went off again. Only once this time. Like it was messing with me. I stared at the stairs, almost expecting someone to come down and laugh and say it was a joke, but nothing. I went up to the stairs and looked up at the stairway leading into pitch blackness. I was scared to turn on the light and illuminate someone standing at the top of the stairs next to my sister's room, but I turned on the light anyway, and there was nothing there. I went up the stairs and turned on all the lights and went up to my sister's door and pressed the doorbell button. It worked normal and there wasn't any problem that I could see on it. So I took it off the wall and took out the batteries and put them in my pocket, leaving the batteryless doorbell on the bed. I turned around and started walking out of the room when as I got to the door, the fucking doorbell went off again. Chills instantly went down my spine and I felt a presence I've never felt in that house before. I went downstairs, trying not to freak out, and felt the batteries moving around in my pocket. It went off again several times in a row before abruptly stopping mid-ring. I thought that maybe if I ignore it, that it will go away, so I thought I would watch something cheery. I found a SpongeBob marathon. It has been probably around an hour since the doorbell incident, and I've nearly forgotten about the whole thing when out of the corner of my eye, saw a black mass the shape of a huge dog. Now my grandma only owns Shih Tzus and a Chihuahua, so there isn't anything taller than my knee in the house. But this black sorta transparent mass was huge, like a big-ass wolf. It went from the hallway, behind the couch, then sprinting out the back door, causing the big heavy back door to fly open and slam into the wall. I jumped so high out of the chair and every dog in the house was flipping shit. Not like the annoying bark they do when someone strange is around, but more like they were terrified. I jumped up and ran outside to try to see this mass, but only catching the ass end of it running into our workshop. We had a motion light out there, and it triggered the light on in front of the shop. The shop was obviously not in use, so the light inside was off, and all you can see from the outside is the door slightly open, but nothing but darkness from inside. After this thing ran inside the shop, it turned around and stared at me through the slightly open door. Now this is what gave me nightmares for a long time. When it stared at me, it had this yellow glow emitting from its eyes. That stopped me dead in my tracks. I no longer wanted to pursue this thing. I called a friend to let them know what happened and talked to them until my family came home. I haven't really told my family what happened that night, because I didn't want to freak them out or have them telling me I'm crazy. I'm a pretty logical guy who doesn't really believe in paranormal things. I've had a lot of weird and creepy experiences in my life, and maybe I'll tell you guys some more stories sometime. But that was one that really tripped me out and kept me up for a long time. Before I tell you the story I have, I wanted to say that I have visited this subreddit for the past year or two, but never actually contributed anything. The stories that appear on this sub are always good to read if I have a couple of minutes to kill. I made this account just to tell this story because the most fucked up thing ever just happened to me. Like actually fucked up. I think I almost was murdered tonight. I know that most of these stories on this sub are bullshit. People make stuff up for a good read. I know believing stories written by some stranger on the internet is difficult, but the story I'm about to tell you is genuine. Sorry in advance for any grammar errors, but it happened a couple hours ago and I'm still pretty shaken up. I often visit my girlfriend on the weekends. Tonight I had an extra long shift at work, so I didn't finish until about 9ish. To get to her house, I need to take a train to the town she lives in. It's about a 20-minute walk away from the train station. I normally get to the station at about 4, which means it's still light and there are lots of people walking about, coming home from work and such, but as it was later at night, there weren't any people around. The walk to her house is usually quite pleasant. There are many Victorian houses, which are really nice to look at compared to the sea of boring terraced houses from around where I live. The streets I walk down to get to Chloe's house have houses either side which all have front gardens. I always told Chloe when we paid off out student loans and were ready to start a family, we could buy our own house on one of the streets around here. There were plenty of street lights, so it wasn't dark, but it was still cold and I was only wearing a jumper because I forgot my coat to work. Thinking about it, I guess it was kind of creepy. The streets were silent and I was the only person I saw on the entire journey. I guess I might just be thinking it was creepy because of the fucked up shit that happened. Next, about 5 minutes into the journey, I heard faint screams. They seemed to be coming from the house I was standing right in front of. It was hard to make out what was being said, but in between cries, I could clearly make out the word help being screamed over and over. The voice was a woman's. She sounded young, maybe in her 20s or 30s. Without thinking too much, I ran up to the house. At the time, I didn't really notice, but the front door was open, like not all the way open. From a distance it looked closed, but it was very slightly ajar. This was probably a clue that some weird shit was going on. I mean, Chloe's neighborhood is not that bad, low crime rates and that, but it was dark and the door was open. That's just weird. I guess I was too panicked by the cries for help that I didn't notice. So anyway, I opened the door. I don't recall much about the inside of the house, but from what I remember, the door led into a hallway, with the stairs immediately to the right. The house was quite dark, like the lights they were using were those power saver ones that don't shine brightly. I called out, asking where the girl was. She replied immediately, "Up here, please help." It was coming from up the stairs. I started running up the stairs. As I got to the top, it was a lot darker than the downstairs. There were no lights turned on, and the only thing I could see was the light from an open door across from me. It was then I saw there was a body lying on the floor, surrounded by blood which had stained into the carpet beneath it. At this point I was freaking out. I asked the girl if she had phoned for an ambulance, but she replied with "Please, come in here, help me." She kept crying and saying "please" over and over. My mind was a mess. I couldn't think straight, and I started walking towards the door. It was here that I noticed that I couldn't actually see the girl. Like, it's weird, right? I don't know how that guy got hurt, but if it happened and you were screaming for help, you would be next to the body. But this girl wasn't. I asked again if she had called for help, but I got the same reply. She just kept on asking me to go in the room and help her. It was here I realized how odd this situation was. I was in some stranger's house. Something seemed very off. I was scared at this point. I don't really know when the feeling of "oh shit, someone's in trouble" turned to "oh shit, I might be in trouble," but either way, I didn't move. Had it not been for a fucking bleeding body on the floor, I would have ran away there and then. I knew I needed to help this guy. "Where are you?" I asked. This was perhaps a dumb. I knew where she was. I heard the screams coming from the room with the body in it. "Here, come help me, please." Her voice sounded genuinely terrified, but I stayed where I was. At this point, I noticed something. There were two shadows being cast under the bottom of the door. I guess my mind jumped to the conclusion that they were her legs because I asked without thinking, "Are you behind the door?" Her crying stopped immediately. There was a pause which was probably only a couple seconds, but compared to how quickly she had responded to my other questions, it felt like forever. Eventually she said, "Come here, please." But this time, it sounded like an order. There was no fear in her voice anymore. The stutter from crying had gone, and it sounded so much more sinister. Maybe I am exaggerating this because I was fucking terrified, but I swear her voice changed from being scared to hostile. That was the last thing that I know happened in that house. I instantly turned and ran downstairs. I ran out of the house and down the street as fast as I could. I reached Chloe's house, and as she opened the door, I jolted in and slammed the door shut behind me. She could tell I was shaken up, but she thought I was just playing with her. I do that a lot, scare her, so that's how I played it off. I told her that something was chasing me, but did it so it seemed obvious I was teasing her. I still haven't told her about what happened. The next couple hours we spent watching TV. I was silent for most of it. She is upstairs asleep now. I told her I would be up soon, but I wanted to write this. I have to tell someone, just to get it off my chest. I haven't phoned the police or anything. I probably should, but I am trying to put it out of my mind. I guess writing this account will be good if I do need to make an official statement or some shit. I mean, I think someone fucking died tonight. I am shit scared right now, and sitting downstairs alone at 11:45 isn't exactly the most comforting setting for writing a near-death experience. Maybe I am overstating this. Maybe I just ran away from a terrified girl who needed my help. But her voice, that anger, I don't want to think about it anymore. I don't know what is more terrifying, the thought that might have almost died tonight, or the thought that someone else might have died and I did nothing to help them.